If you are a Windows operating system user, you are probably familiar with the one default layer of security that stands between you, the legitimate user, or an unauthorized user, and your desktop, which happens to be the sign-in screen that you are seeing right over here. But what if I told you that relying solely on this layer of security isn't enough? Because for a system to be resilient against unauthorized access, it must have multiple layers of security implemented on it. So in this video, we are going to take it a bit further. I will show you how to add an extra layer of security during startup by using the BitLocker drive encryption and group policy settings on your Microsoft system. This means that your data stays locked down before Windows even boots, and only someone with the correct key or PIN gets access to your system. So whether you are securing a personal laptop or tightening security on an enterprise workstation, this method will give you a stronger control over who can access your system. So let's dive into it. I am going to reboot the system for you to know how the Microsoft Windows operating system is built. It's not going to ask you for any layer of security during startup before it takes you to the sign-in screen as usual. So when you see your boot logo or your Windows logo like this, then it means that your operating system files are being loaded, and then it is preparing the sign-in screen for you to provide your credentials. And if your credentials are validated, it takes you to your desktop successfully for you to use your system. Okay, so here on our sign-in screen, I'm going to provide my password to log onto the system. So we are going to use the group policy editor along with the BitLocker drive encryption. Both features are available in the Pro and Enterprise editions of the Microsoft Windows desktop operating systems. So I'm going to display my start menu and then type gpedit.msc, and then I click run as administrator. So here in the group policy editor, I'm going to go to administrative templates. Under computer configuration section, I double click Windows components, and then I double click BitLocker drive encryption. So here under BitLocker drive encryption, I double click operating system drives, and then I double click require additional authentication at startup. So like the name goes, we are going to configure an additional authentication during startup. So I'm going to click enabled radio button, and then automatically it checks this box and says allow BitLocker without a TPM. Now this configuration can be done in two different methods. You can use, or you can configure this policy without TPM. You can also do it with TPM. In our case, in this video, we are going to configure it without the TPM. So we have to leave this box checked. All of these parameters here have to be ignored because they are used along with TPM, which is not what we are doing in this video. So I'm going to click apply, and then I click OK and close the group policy editor. So I'm going to open command prompt from here to continue the process. So I type cmd, and then I click run as administrator. You need to run cmd with administrative privileges before you can execute these commands. So here in command prompt, I'll type manage -bde, which stands for BitLocker drive encryption -protectors -add, and then C:. The reason why we are using C:, is that C is the boot volume. So I'll go to Explorer, and then we have our C drive over here. So by default, Microsoft assigns drive letter C to the boot volume and attaches the Windows logo to the boot drive. So here, I'm going to continue with the command by typing password as the last command. So we are protecting the boot volume with a password. So I hit enter from here, and then I enter my password. Hit the enter key to confirm. Alright, so it has accepted the password. If you see anything other than this one, then it probably represents an error. So if the command and your passwords match, then you're going to have this feedback. Now the next thing is to execute a command to encrypt the drive. So I'm going to type manage -bde once again. This time the next parameter is on. So we are turning on BitLocker for volume C. And then we enter a last parameter to create a recovery key for the password, so that in an event we forget the password or we need to decrypt the drive, we can use the recovery key. So I'll hit the enter key, and then we have a pop-up over here indicating that we need to reboot the system for the drive encryption to resume or to start. Now before we do that, here I'm going to click restart later. Before we do that, we have some actions that we must pay attention to over here. It says save this numerical recovery password in a secure location away from your computer. So it is referring to these numerical values that we have over here that I have highlighted. So I'm going to right click to copy. Now in command prompt, when you want to copy something, you highlight it and then you right click for it to copy for you. Now it says save it in a secure location. You must not save the recovery key on the same computer that you are performing this configuration. It's very, very important. So you can save it to OneDrive, Google Drive, or an external storage device. So in this configuration, in my Explorer, I have a volume over here which is connected to the host machine. So I am doing the configuration for the virtual machine, and I'm going to save the recovery key onto the host machine. So the two are different systems. So I'm going to open this directory and then come to BDE recovery folder, and then here I right click and create a notepad over here and then call it BDE underscore recovery. So any name at all that can help you remember what you have entered over there. So I'm going to click paste, and then I click file and click save to save that recovery key. So I close it from here. Now I am ready to reboot the system. So I'll come here, then I type in shutdown /r/t and then 0 to reboot the system. So upon reboot, we are going to get a pop-up with a BitLocker feature for us to provide a password before it takes us to the sign-in screen, just as you are seeing over here. So you can see that the configuration or the policy that we have implemented has added one layer of security to the system. So we must provide a password over here. That is the password we entered in command prompt to encrypt the drive. We need to provide it here before it takes us to the sign-in screen. So I'm going to enter the password. Now the password for locking the drive has to be very, very complex in order to make it difficult for anybody to try using brute force tactics to gain unauthorized access to your system. So you can see that after entering the password, it is loading the operating system to take us to the sign-in screen for us to provide another credential. So one thing that we need to take note of is that the password that you used for the BitLocker drive encryption or for the startup authentication must be different from the password you use for your user account, because you are trying to make things harder for whoever is trying to access your system without authorization. So why must you use the same password for the startup authentication as well as the user account? The reason is that when an intruder uses the brute force tactics to gain access at the startup authentication, and it's the same password that he's going to use to log onto your system, then you are back to 0. So there is the need for the two passwords to differ. So over here, I'm going to enter the password to log onto the system for us to see if our volume C is being encrypted. So here on our desktop, we are going to come to the system tree, and then we click the BitLocker drive encryption icon, and we see that our volume C is being encrypted. So let's go to the Explorer. So here in our Explorer, we see that volume C now has a padlock beside it, which is undergoing the encryption process. So it's going to encrypt volume C. So henceforth, any subsequent reboot or system startup that you do, you are going to have to provide a password for the BitLocker at the startup stage before it takes you to your sign-in screen. So when I click manage BitLocker over here, it's going to take me to the BitLocker management feature here in your settings applet. So this is where you manage the BitLocker drive encryption. So later on, if you do not want it, you can come here and turn it off, change your password, or remove the password from the drive. Okay, so that is it for this configuration. You have added a powerful new shield to your Windows startup process. By combining BitLocker with custom group policy and boot level configuration, you've made it significantly harder for unauthorized users to even get close to your files. If this walkthrough helped you step up your system security, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe, and tap the notification bell for more hands-on Windows security tips, virtualization guides, and system hardening tricks. If you have any questions or want me to cover advanced features like the TPM configurations, drop them in the comment section. I would love your feedback. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay secure and keep on building.